home. We are live. Musty Wargamers Season 4, Episode 9.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Musty Wargamer Show.
Said we were going to either go live or go home. We're already
trying not to do neither.
So, yeah, I'm actually a little behind the 8 ball today. I was just telling Rusty. I forgot to even put up the stream until just before the show. I didn't schedule it. So if anybody kind of is upset because they didn't see it, let's say in my YouTube feed or whatever, like they normally do ahead of time, I did put it on the Facebook page, and I did send out a little note today on the phone that we were going to be doing it. But I do apologize if that created some confusion. I'm sure you guys have had this happen, but I've just had an insane day. One of those days where you're setting out to do a couple things and just it never ends, like the amount of stuff that comes your way.
You are a very small person in a very big world today.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, but yeah, you know, still doing good though. I had a nice dinner and I've got my musty drink ready and prep for the show. So I am like pumped. And there is Knight's Pantry. Scott, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, Scott. And we also have Alan from Alan Smith and Hobby and Wargames in the house. Hello, Alan, as well.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Yes. All right. So cool. 2 people already in the house. So despite all my problems, my scheduling problems.
I was telling Smitty that, or Scott there, that it was like, yeah, we got a show tonight. It's like we were chatting, you know, back and forth. And it's like, I need to go so I can get ready for the show. Because I had to grab all my stuff. I'm running upstairs, downstairs to grab my drink and getting all my stuff that I want to show tonight. And it was running around myself because we watched, was it Prodigal Son? It's a show on Fox.
Uh-huh.
Wife and I watched that until probably about 20 after 8 tonight. Mm-hmm. We liked that. We had a laugh. That was a good episode tonight.
I remember a time when we were so worried that we would actually do like whole shows on a day off just to make sure everything was working. Now we're like so used to it that we barely
don't even think about it. Planning hours and days ahead. And I was like, yeah. My wife said, "You got a show tonight?" Yeah, I do. I got a show tonight. Like, okay.
You better get to it.
Yeah, it was like about a quarter till. We were sitting there chatting away, and it's like, well, I suppose I better get downstairs and actually get sitting in front of my desk. Mm-hmm. So she was like, well, you better get to it. Oh, yeah. Smitty, he just purchased the new miniatures rule book, Baron's War, that went on pre-order. I think I shared it with you and Dan. I
just saw that before coming in the show. I saw you guys were talking, and I saw something about that. I don't know much about it.
Yeah, I'm going to pre-order it. It comes with if you pre-order it, you get a free miniature.
Oh, nice.
So I'm thinking about ordering. Just, you know, I'm a rules guy nut. So I like just ordering rules just for the sake of looking at it because you never know. It might be the one that.
The Holy Grail.
Yeah, it's the one that he's like, oh, the heavens open up. Like, this is the one.
Do you remember in 2021 when that rule set came out? That changed everything.
Yeah. And no one else wanted to play with me.
So overall, how are things going with you, Rusty? As far as I've been keeping up with all the stuff that you've been painting. It seems like you've
been a busy beaver this week. Mm-hmm. For the last week, I've just been going rampant. It's like after taking about a month off of just kind of doing some stuff over the holidays. It like that itch hit and it's like, you must go to your desk. Where'd that voice come from? Oh, that's me. So it was like, sat down. It's like, you know, hello, my little friend. It's time to play. Pick up the brushes. And it's like, you missed me. And just want to start and just, it's like sometimes when you take your summer off where you just kind of like veg. Mm-hmm. Sometimes like during the I do that every once in a while. I don't always take time off, but it's every once in a while when I do. And then when I come back to it, it's like, why did I stop? And it's like I have to do something, you know.
Well, and that's the good thing about getting that sort of mojo back after you take a break and re-energizing. I mean, some people don't feel they need to do it. Like, we're all different. I like the whole getting the mojo back, and the whole taking a break for a moment in between a project or something, and then just realize, like, seeing all the stuff that I want to read about or look into while I'm not painting, that's psyching me up to come back. And I just find it's a great feeling when you kind of get into the groove of things at the painting desk and you get a lot of work done.
Yeah, it was one of those deals where I spent a month playing my one board game. You know, I've been putting those videos out. If you watch on my channel, and I did Stalingrad 1942, the whole Foul Blau campaign, and the final video should go up tomorrow. So
cool. That's been a lot of work. You've been putting up a lot of stuff for that.
Yeah, there was 20 something videos that went with that. Like 20. There's going to be like 24, I think.
Right.
Something like that. And it was like you're talking 2 or 3 hours a day that went into each turn. Just sit there, you know, you sit down and you play a turn. Is like, you may see a turn on video is only 10-15 minutes maybe, but you're looking at 2-3 hours worth of gameplay. Yeah, you sit down there and it's not like when you're playing yourself in a solo game. I'm trying to do my best to make both sides win.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of the way I like to play solo games too. If you can somehow approach it that way, where you can put aside what you're trying to do when you're on the other side of the table and just try to accomplish something for both sides, then it's actually kind of fun.
Yeah, the worst thing though is being the German commander and putting someone that knows how to play armor or is an armor officer themselves and put them in charge of a bunch of armor. You're like, I'm sorry, you guys, but you're going to be on the bad side of this.
So what's go ahead.
Then I turn around and look on the Russian side and go, I have some armor, but it's not as good. How am I going to use this to my best advantage? And, well.
So what's your show and tell on your Musty drink tonight, or do you have anything to show tonight? I know you've been putting up a lot.
I don't know if I ever showed this on the show. It is Doers.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you...
Caribbean Smooth.
Oh, I don't think you have. I think you may have had Doers on the show. Just
I've had Doers before, but
yeah.
I've never done the Caribbean cast before.
Okay.
This stuff smells good.
So do they add anything to it, like something sweet or something, or no? Like, it's not rum, but
your standard Doers that has been aged. You know, they age it, then they'll, you know, their vat, then they mix it like they normally do in a vat because it's a blended Scotch, and then they'll take it and put it in a Caribbean rum cask and age it for a while in that. And all that the rum flavors that are in the cask, because it's in the wood, because when you're aging it in the wood, it permeates into the wood. And then you get the next liquid that goes in there, all that Scotch starts absorbing and it breathes and it blends together. And then you end up with imagine a Doers that is kind of similar, and it has some of the characteristics of a good Scotch, not Scotch, but has rum.
Some rum, yeah. I wondered when they said Caribbean on there, I wondered if that had something to do with it, because I usually think of sweeter, a little bit of that, like the rum. Well, that's cool. That neat to try. So then, what about your hobbying? Is there anything you want to show that tonight, or?
Well, I have a whole bunch of stuff.
I was going to ask you one thing though. I noticed that Supergirl of old is replaced by a big boat now. Is that something right behind you?
The Turkania?
Yeah.
This is the Turkania.
Nice. Now you started showing that already, right? Like you've
A
started
long
showing
time
it.
ago. This is
Yeah,
like,
yeah. That's looking good.
2 years ago. This is the Turkania. This is my sloop from Blood and Plunder.
Somebody in your boatyard has to be fired if it's 2 years ago that you showed that last.
Yeah, it's been sitting in the box. I have it in a tub, just
It looks
sitting in its tub.
looks good. That's cool.
And I got it out because it's part of tonight's show. And just to show it off a little bit. Hey, it's show and tell time.
Well, let me grab that back.
It's like the rat rigs and everything that's on there. Rat
Yeah.
line. I did all those by hand.
Let me blow up your screen there. Sorry. There we go. Yep.
You see all the rat lines.
Yep.
I did all those by hand. I rigged this thing up myself.
That's nice.
It's
That's a
like
good
normally they show everything that's supposed to be, you just run some basic lines and stuff if you wanted to. And I was like, if this is going to be on the table, I want it to look as kind of realistic as possible. It even has cloth sails and everything.
Nice.
And normally they said, you put paper ones on. And I was like, I'm going to put cloth ones on.
You're like,
Actual
"Not on
canvas
my
sail.
boat." No paper on my boat.
It will catch fire. All right. So yeah, it was a lot of work went into putting that one together. Boy, it's like
Yeah, this looks good. Yeah.
I feel like I'm grainy all of a sudden. Like, then I have this,
Oh yeah.
all this stuff.
I've been watching all that stuff.
Yeah.
Painting like a madman.
Well, when I get going and I can crank something out real quickly.
Mhm.
Like I sent you a picture of this. Was it yesterday?
Yeah, I believe so.
I painted this whole thing in one day.
That's good.
You can't really tell all the details in this light that I have,
Mhm.
but I'll do some. I think I posted a few pictures up on our Facebook group. So if you want to see more detailed pictures, you can go there. That's the Tomb Scorpion for the Tomb King's army. I did do a Sculpey putty baked up and made a little base so he can be glued on so he sits there. Otherwise, he just kind of falls off.
Mhm.
So I did that one. And then I have these guys. My Shopti.
Yes.
So I got 4 of them. There's 2. So that's for the getting my Tomb King's army all together. And then I have these 2 also. 2 more.
Cool. Yeah. Those are cool models.
And I've done 2 videos. You can see here, I got the Cav out here in the front. You see him?
Mm-hmm.
I did 10 Cav. Those were really quick. Those didn't take very long at all. That's an interesting thing as it looks like, oh, you did so much work. I'm like, well, not really. It's like when you look at these guys, there's just all it is bone. With other than doing the shield and spear and the helmet, it's all bone. And it's like you can crank those guys out. I could probably do 20 or 30 of them in a day.
Yeah, yeah.
And have them all look nice. It's just a matter of taking all the time.
The skeleton horde.
Huh?
The skeleton horde.
Yeah. And then in the back side, you have all the skeleton archers.
Yeah. That's cool. That's a lot you got done.
And I have 40 skeleton warriors yet to do. And no, 50 skeleton warriors yet to do. And then I'm working on right now. This is a sneak preview of this guy.
Ooh, sweet. So that's a skeleton giant. Yeah.
I got all the base colors down. The metallic is done except for the swords. I still got to put the steel on those. I got all the brass highlighting done on them. and the bone is done. All I have to do yet is the cloth and the leather.
Mhm.
So then he'll be done, and then finish the all the stuff that's on the base, and then I gotta glue him to his base and do whatever kind of cool stuff I want to do to the base.
Sweet. Oh, you've been busy. That's an awesome looking miniature there. I'm interested in seeing that guy all painted up.
And I also have Nagash. He's going to be, or Nagash.
Yeah.
He'll be part of our next Musty Wargamers painting challenge.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to that. I really enjoyed our last one. It really kind of kicked me in the butt and got me really into doing the old hammer again, like picking that up. And I've been just kind of really enjoying that. And so I'm looking forward to doing another one this spring.
Wow, this smells, this Caribbean cask, you can smell all the spices and stuff from the rum. It has kind of you can smell the sugar cane.
It smells like Hawaiian tropic sunblock.
Yeah. It smells good. It smells really good. Sorry, Palmer. I'm just gonna kick back and relax a bit for a while.
Well, I'll go reverse. Since you're drinking, I'm gonna start with my musty drink, and then I'll go into the other stuff. So I am having a very Canadian drink tonight, and I've never had. Huh? Yeah.
Called it.
That's right. I never had it on the show yet.
I have some of that in my fridge right now.
Yeah. So I actually, they changed their bottle over the years, and I haven't had Moosehead in a while, and I do like it. I don't know about you, but I find that Moosehead, Heineken, and Grolsch are sort of like this stage of what I call skunkiness in beer. It's like a skunkiness that I like. I know skunkiness like musty, like the Musty Wargamers. Like some people would be like, "What musty? That doesn't sound good." Skunky to me is like a flavor that I actually don't mind. It's like this weird flavor, like in some beers, like, and I find Grolsch has a very strong taste of it, but Moosehead is like a really mild of that style of beer to me.
It has a lot of the same hops in it. So, hey, Dan. Dan just popped in.
Yeah, hello, Dan.
It has a lot of the same hops in it. And the thing about Grolsch is that it has to come from over the pond, and it usually gets stuck on a boat in some container as it's getting shipped across, and it gets hot, and that adds to that flavorness. And I don't mind it either. It's something like you said, it's something I expect.
Yeah, I like Heineken too, and it has that kind of flavor too. So Moosehead, that's what I'm having tonight, my Canadian drink. And I will switch cameras, and so I'm not going to show what I've really been working on for the last month, although like the holidays I didn't really work on it, so it took me a little longer, is I did the Mohawks, the fife and drum Warman and miniature Mohawks.
They look really good.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I am really happy with them. I have them up on the Facebook page as well as on the channel. I put a video out. So really happy with those. And I am going to show something tonight that's quite related to that I've started to show, but I'm going to show a little more detail. And then even further, I'm going to do a video tomorrow to talk about it even further. But one thing I was showing Rusty before the show, I'm going to switch cameras where I just turned the blazing light on here, is I am going to show here just something I printed out. I actually, let's see here.
Go ahead, your big screen.
Yeah, I'm going to big screen it here. So just a simple little thing, but when you invest in a 3D printer, you can print stupid things like tree ornaments, which I have done like for Christmas and stuff and all kinds of stuff. But this is actually just pretty cool. I already have stuff to hold my paints on my hobby desk, or not hobby desk, but on my shelving. And I have two large, kind of much bigger things than this. But what I really wanted is for both my Vallejo and my GW, something I can keep right off my hobby work area that has just my high frequency paints. And so these have technical things like my varnishes that I use for every project. It has most of the browns I use from Vallejo that come up like on every project. I've got then my white to gray, dark gray Model Air Vallejo, a couple of whites like ivory and white, and then my Army Painter tones that I use a lot. So these are just things that I use quite a bit. So I have less stuff scattered on my desk while I'm working on the project. And also it's just quick grab, for things that I use quite frequently. So I'm going to do another one of these that's just for my GW because it's the same designer but just different size on the actual pots. And so yeah, little cool thing. It takes a while to print something like that off, but it was kind of worth it. One thing that I'm going to show in my sort of problems with it, or the problems I'm trying to solve, but I'll just show a little bit tonight what I'm doing with it, is I am now working on a Mohawk that's just a model, and like not the actual Musket and Tomahawk and Sharp Practice miniatures, but I'm doing a 54 scale Mohawk that I'll be doing in the same style as the ones that I just did. And you know what? This is a manual zoom. Let me just zoom that in there. You can see him a little bit more crisp now. And so my plan for him is, I thought initially I was going to have him just sort of walking across the river. He's still walking across the river, but I use some epoxy sculpt and some stones. I'm planning on having this like the middle of a river. And so he's going to be essentially walking down this as if he's in the middle of the river and there are stones and he's just kind of walking across it. So there's not going to be any land on either side. And it's going to be, I'm going to be doing a pour of water effects. And I'll talk about that in a second. But I left a couple of holes here in this, and I'm going to actually sculpt some rainbow trout that are going to be swimming, that you can see in the water effects and swimming, kind of swimming through. And if I take this off, because none of this is fixed here, and show what I'm planning, is like ultimately I'll have it on this with the water effects and him kind of walking across it. And one of the things that I'm having a little trouble with, and I'm going to talk about in a video tomorrow a little more though, is how to pour the water effects in such a way that it doesn't get all over the place. I've used them before, but I think the biggest challenge is making a dam while pouring this and having it not make a total mess. I printed a base because I didn't want to work directly on this wooden thing. I printed a base to put the epoxy sculpt on with my 3D printer, but it has printed it more of like an octagon rather than, so that makes it a little hard to begin with when it comes to just wrapping something around it, as far as the corners on it. I could sand it. I could do a couple of different things. Yeah. But what I ended up doing is I ended up printing a mold with my 3D printer. And my plan is, it's a little bit bigger. This is already a little smaller than the wood thing, so there's room. This is just slightly like a millimeter around bigger than this base. And so the idea is that the water effects will sort of drip around it. It'll go right around it, just a little bit. And that I was thinking I'll put Vaseline, a thin coat, on the edge of all of this. So I have more of like a mold release kind of, just a thin coat. And then I'm going to pour. And but I am not going to just do it on this. I'm going to glue this down onto like a piece of plastic card. And that's where I'm going to get into my video tomorrow to talk about that, because I am interested in some people's advice on that as far as how best to do that, how best to be able to get it off eventually, and also how best to make sure that it's done in such a way that it's not going to drip, through the seams, and then it's also not going to change as even this has some fine, because it's the poster tack stuff. Yeah,
could make a like a base, around the outside of that your bottom base.
Yeah,
and then you tack that on there, and it'll create a
bit of a seal.
Yeah.
That's true. That would be one option, is to sort of dam it, like just basically putting it around. I wasn't sure, just to make sure it doesn't move and stuff, whether I should still glue it on something, like some sort of glue. I was thinking white glue. But one of the issues, too, is that this isn't completely sheer. You can see the lines in this, and it has a texture. And so I thought by putting the Vaseline Smooth on it, it might take some of that away. But I definitely don't want, one of my big concerns is I don't want whatever I'm doing in here to affect
the outside,
the outside of the actual water resin. You know, like I don't want it to take space through its density.
Yeah, you're gonna probably might want to sand your container there.
This
Take some 200 grit sandpaper to it.
Yeah.
And sand it down so you get a nice smoother surface on it.
Yeah, that might help, and it certainly wouldn't hurt anything for me to try that. I've not sanded this stuff much, but I bet you're right. I bet you I could. So I'm gonna talk more. We don't want the whole show to be about this today, but I'm gonna talk more about this tomorrow on video. If you guys are interested, or feel free jumping in and providing some comments. I wouldn't, for those in particular that have worked with some of this stuff, the water resins and the molds and all that stuff, it might be helpful to hear that advice. Let's see here. I'm going to switch cameras here.
I've seen so many videos of people doing that, and they have doing something similar to that, and then they release it, and then they have it on a turn lathe or something, and then they have sandpaper on spinning to sand it down and buff it out. But,
yeah. Oh, sorry. Here, hang on. There we go.
Hey,
there's a little bit of trouble with that. Depending on the epoxy you use, it can be hard to sometimes sand and polish. But not every one is the same. But I've seen that too. There's a guy that has a channel. I don't know if you've seen it, but all he does is creates deep water pores with cool monsters and cool kinds of things in it.
Yeah.
And so man, he'll actually really sand that stuff down and make it look beautiful. But I don't know that it's Envirotex Light what I'm using. Like I actually use this stuff here, which has been great. I had really, really good success with this in pouring my lake. It looks beautiful, but I don't know.
A lot of model railroaders use that stuff. So imagine in the forums in their area, they'll probably have a lot of deals with that too.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine so. I think you're right. I got it at a hobby shop that does a lot of model railroading stuff. Let's see here. Looks like we got, before we get started on our main topics, we've got Alan saying cheers by smashing some beer mugs together. And we got James Browning. I backed the Kickstarter for the Game Envy Desk Wizard paint holders. And so I'm not familiar with those, but that sounds good. It's cool. So we have a couple topics tonight. Rusty, do you want to do the introductions tonight on the topics?
Which you want to do the miniature?
You pick.
Well, let's do the miniature one, since we're already talking about miniature stuff right now.
Yeah.
It's single pose versus multi pose type of miniatures. Mm-hmm. Which ones do you prefer, or is there a preference, or if you have to assemble 1,000, or which one do you really prefer? So
which ones are better? Let's just like pull away the whole you prefer thing. Just which ones are better?
If I want to get right into painting them, the single pose are the awesome ones. Now we're going to understand why I have the Tarkania out here. We have the Blood and Plunder 100% mono pose miniatures. Yes. The same guys that are parked themselves on the painted up ones that you find in the Blood and Plunder rule book for the English. Those are nice. The one thing I just loved about them is like when Alex sent them to me and said, "Hey, I need you to paint these up for me so we can use them for the Kickstarter." I was like, "I can do this." And it's like, how much time do you need? It's like it's going to be easy. He sent me some pictures what they're going to look, what they look like. And it's like, you already assembled? It's like, no. This one was like, that's great. I like that. That's great. So it's like a single pose, awesomeness. That's the one thing I like about it, is that all I had to do is just put it. I threw it in simple green, cleaned off the flash, and went to town after priming it. That's the nice thing about single pose, is that if you have individuals that don't have the skill set really yet to get into, the hobby aspect of it, that's the best way to get people in.
Mm-hmm.
Now you go to the other side of it where you want to assemble a whole bunch of, let's say, skirmish forces, let's say Saga, and you have like your Viking little horde going out there, mm-hmm. and you want everybody to look different. Everybody's unique. That's the wonderful thing about multi-pose stuff, is that you can cater them to you how you want.
Yeah.
So that's the two different camps you got there. Right now, if you want to get people into a hobby quickly and with less muss and fuss, monopose is the way to go. Mm-hmm. They got their purposes. But
what about from a financial perspective? Do you think
it just depends. I picked up the. You're getting into your case, aren't you?
I am. I'm actually taking one earphone off. I'm listening to you, and I'm just grabbing something because I should have done this beforehand. But just keep going. I'm right here. Yeah. I got some stuff for my answer on this discussion too.
It's like Dan and I went through, and let's see, I have how many? At least 150. Assembled 150 of my British force for my American War of Independence, and some of them, they're supposed to be multi-pose, but they're really not multi-pose,
right?
And it took forever to put them together. That was the one thing I hate about. I'm not an assembly guy myself. I don't like spending time assembling stuff. I said that many times.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, it's not my favorite part of the hobby either, with miniatures in particular. I mean, some of the model kits can be fun, like the vehicles and stuff, but with miniatures, like having to assemble like 40 miniatures with like 100 components, like.
And you're looking at, let's say, the 40K stuff where Space Marines, and you got the little doodads. It's like, oh, here's the grenades, here's the pack, here's the thing. And he's like, glue this on, and I'll glue this on, and I'll glue this. You got the arm out here, or glue this. Or he's like, pointing or whatever it may be. And you sit there, and after a while, you're just like, oh, this is getting tedious. It's driving me crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much how far I want to go into it at the moment. What say you?
Well, I'll kind of approach this from the two different ways, kind of like you did, in the sense that I'll start out just by acknowledging, multi-pose has a purpose. And multi-pose and multi-component are not the same thing. And what I mean by that is infinity miniatures, which I love, or metal miniatures that I really like, they oftentimes will have one arm, with a gun, or something that you have to attach. But for the most part, the pose itself is fixed. And the reason they do that is mainly to try to get the best possible miniature design from the casting. And so at times, you are limited with a single cast metal miniature as to what you can do. And you actually can enhance the level of postures and the amount of things that are coming off of the model by allowing an arm here or there to have a peg and, being able to insert the arm in. But it's still a metal miniature, and it usually fits very snugly and is done very well. So multi-component and multi-pose are not necessarily the same thing. However, multi-pose models generally are multi-component, like you talked about, and are require a lot of assembly. And so you brought up a good example with the Saga miniatures, gripping beasts, like all the levies and the warriors that I've done from them. You can, with plastic kits that are multi-pose, you can get a good bang for your buck and to get a lot of models quickly by using that method rather than getting the same number as single posed metal miniatures, let's say. As it's generally cheaper to get, to have access to plastic kits that will do that. And like you said, you have more options. Many people like the plastic and like that for conversions, changing the poses, putting multiple different heads on different ones, and just you can do a lot to sort of vary that force-up. And so it has a purpose, and I've used that and think it's good. And I likely would still buy one of those gripping beast boxes, for something in the future. If I was to do a Viking force, and I thought about it in the future for Saga, As much as I'd love to get like a footsore warband of their metal models, like for the Warriors and the Hearthguard and like what we were talking about with Bill last week, like what he's doing. I'd love to get that, but I likely would still get a group of their levy, you know, in their box set, just to be able to do like what we're talking about. But as far as my absolute preference and why, I do like single pose and single cast metal miniature models, like, and I'll just show an example of why that is the case, and I'll use an orc, space orc from the old Rogue Trader days to show that. And so this guy here,
he looks very familiar.
yeah, he shows up in my videos sometimes. The thing that I really like about him, and for the purpose of this discussion, is that the way he's actually got his gun, let's see, focus here, the way he's got his gun pulled back and he's leaning with his head right over it like that. This sort of posture here, it's very, very hard with multi-pose models that come with like space orcs that have kind of arms that are meant to kind of reach out and have a gun that's not even straight out, but just sort of like at a, we'll call it an obtuse angle or something, you know, that anywhere you sort of move that arm, it's sort of at that obtuse angle, unless you cut it all up and green stuff it and try to really convert it into a different type of arm position. This is the beauty of a single cast sculpture. I mean, it's basically a sculpture, right?
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, it seems very limiting because you can only do that. You know, you could have like 10 guys that look like that if you want. Back in those days, like, you know, you had smaller armies, but you had each one look different like this.
But there's a lot of action in that model.
That's right. Like there's a lot of intricacy in the sculptor and what they put into it. And as compared to what you can do with 10 guys that all have their arms bent at the same angle.
Yeah.
And, you know, even though there is some variety and it's not always just at the same angle, what I would say is to some people, it's more realistic to be able to have a squad of 10 guys that you can kind of move around differently. But I would, from my perspective, I would say that you can almost never with those models without a tremendous amount of work, that almost to the point where it might not even be worth it, create something that looks as dynamic as a purpose sculpted model. And I never used to think about it that way before, but that's the way I sort of look at it. And so, yes, there is, other than just kind of taking away some flash, there's no real assembly time to it. And so like we were talking about, that's great. There's a lot more money in doing it like this, like to pay for it. You know, if you want to actually have the same thing, if I wanted to have, you know, instead of my Vikings getting my levy from like a plastic kit that can give me 25 or 30, 40 models, you know, to try to collect that same army with the individuals like this, forget the fact that it's Oldhammer, even just regular metal models, it'd be a fortune in comparison. So there is a price for this for sure. In most cases, this is much more expensive. Don't get me wrong, there are plastic models that are just as expensive, but what we're talking about are those ones that there's infantry kits that, you know, where you can, you know, you're building them all out and basically they're not the character models that even have a tendency to lean towards single pose for the reasons we're talking about here. I think we're talking about those infantry ones. So I will shut this off and switch back. So for me, I am very much about the single cast or the single pose dynamic sculpts. Those are the ideal for me. However, recognizing that those multi-pose kits, you know, like have advantages. You can build out your armies a lot quicker. There's some affordability advantages, but there's only real one answer if it's like we're talking ideals for me.
Yeah, when you were showing that action right there, every time I have any type of model that you're able to pose and you're trying to put, I always try to get somebody that's trying to actually get that action that they're actually doing the shooting out of the multi-pose. And it's really hard to do. You know, it's like normally you always have them sitting there holding the rifle like this, or they're kind of like at the low slung as they're marching, walking along type thing. And that's the easiest thing, but it's really hard to get that action. It's like actually sighting down the barrel there, or down the whatever they have for optic.
Right.
And it's hard.
Well, and it has to be that they've thought of that. Like maybe they've thrown in a couple of options. If you have a group of 10 to 15 guys, maybe there's a couple of sets of arms that are meant specifically for that. But like you said, I mean, oftentimes that's not the case.
Yeah, I did all the Warlord game ones where they actually have them sighting down because they're actually in the firing line.
Mm-hmm.
They designed them that way.
Right.
That was obvious. That was how they're designed to be. And, everybody's lined up. The front rank is laying off a volley.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. But when you get a typical skirmish type game, that's not quite the case.
Yeah.
And as much as, we said, I like the idea. If I'm doing a skirmish game where I have a limited number of models, you might have a model count, maybe 20 at most.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with like a multi-pose type, because I want everybody to be different. That's one thing. But if you're doing a mass combat type game system, I'm happy with almost everybody. It's like, all right, the front rank's going to have this kind of action. The rear ranks, I want them not to have much action at all because they're in the rear ranks. You're talking fantasy here, or even mass combat, it's like Civil War or anything of that nature, or Napoleonics. The guys in the back rank are either loading or they're just sitting at the ready, and that's fine. They don't need to be 1,000 different pieces. If they're one cast piece, that's awesome. So that's just the way I believe, is like having a single pose is, makes life easier.
Yeah. No, I would agree. And to some degree, I mean, they could be, you can have a beautiful force even of single pose models. It's just, it can be a bit of a fortune. They're generally not built for economy purposes. If you're going to get them that way, you're going to be doing collecting the 1x1 or the 2-pack. In the old days, the blisters, the 2 miniatures at a time. And like, it's going to be quite a bit like to get to that point.
It's as somebody that's built a massive fantasy army out of blister at a time, I understand this expense. It adds up.
Exactly.
And what brings up an interesting thing is like going back at, when you have a transition of different armies, it's like you look at the undead army, and then I look at the first Tomb Kings book, and then I got the last Tomb Kings book, and I'm looking at the point costs in there. It's like, this costs 16 points for a model. Oh, this book, it says it's 12 or 8. And this one, 4. What were they planning on doing? You buying lots of miniatures.
Exactly.
And they're made up, it's like by that time they had plastic kits coming out in droves, so you could, for the cost of buying 2-3 blisters for your little 4s. That's why it's really hard to find those metal miniatures now versus finding all the plastic ones. Yeah.
No, exactly.
Not very many. You didn't have to buy a lot of them.
Even the sculptor, and I say the sculptor because both Fife and Drum, Fleshman and Krentera share sculptors, for their ranges, because that's why I can use both of them, because they're basically the same sculptors. They were always single cast in the past, and in a lot of cases it made sense because they were, your regular troops, like your British militia, and they were all in lines with their guns marching. Like initially they were all marching. Like that's how it all started. But then over time, like different poses came, more dynamic poses came, and now it's not uncommon for hero models like that warrior sachem that I have on horseback that I just did. That arm he has with the gun that's sort of holding the rifle up in the air, that actually is on a peg, and so I could have kept it so it was lower. I might even have been able to have the gun so it was at his side. I just had him holding the gun up in the air, like kind of gonna scream or something, you know what I mean, like egg on the troops. But really, they are branching. I suppose that kind of sculpt you couldn't really achieve if you would, easily, the casting of it with having the gun off the body and the arm off the body like that. So I don't know, like it's sort of a difference. And a couple of the British officers I have from Quintero are also like that, where the sword arm is actually multi-pose. Like you could just put the one arm on and move it up and down and put it where you want to. And so, everybody kind of does it to a degree. Although it's really nothing compared to what we're talking about here. Like if you've done like World War II models where you're putting not only all the arms on, or a couple of the arms on, you're putting the guns in the hands, you're putting all the gear on them, like you're putting all of the pouches like around the back, and like a lot of the equipment. I know the Warlord game ones I did for the US Army for World War II years ago, there was a lot of stuff I had to put on those. And so it's a lot of assembly time like you talked about.
Yeah. I remember way back in the day when we first got into Battletech, everything was monopose mechs. There wasn't parts and parts and parts. It was just a mech.
Yeah.
You might had to glue on a weapon on the shoulder.
Which game was this?
What's that?
Which game was this?
That B-Tech game. And there was times it's like, man, I wish that arm was slightly different. And it was like you'd sit there and you kind of bend it, trying to get it to where you want it. And then finally some say, why don't you just cut it off? And then it's like, well, I got an X-Acto knife. And like, but it was lead, so it didn't take very long to snick it through. And then somebody's like, it's like, why don't you just use a jeweler saw? What's that? So like,
yeah. And now for all of us folks that like to collect the old models from back in the day, and we see those models come up where they've been sort of like completely cut up and re-put together and stuff, we're all like, oh my gosh, I wish I had the original one.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying. That happens a ton. Like that, people did that all over the place.
It's like back then, it's like it was a $2 mech.
Mm-hmm.
You spend $2 on a lead mech, and it wasn't that a lot. It was money, but it wasn't like it was the break the bank type thing.
Yeah.
So you didn't feel too bad when you carved it up and then put it back together and a little green stuff here or there, fill it in with some putty, and you're good to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then later in life when it falls apart or dropped it and somebody, like, but nowadays it's like you get all the mechs are, you get a metal mech and it comes in a small 1,000-piece metal kit, and you're like, boy, you're sucking the life out of me here. It's like I've gotten to the point. It's like when it comes to putting like metal miniatures together that are multi-pit, I'll just clean all the flashing off and then dump them all into a green and simple green overnight, and take them out, clean them up, dry them. And it's like it gets all that oils and everything out. And then you just take a little bit of glue, tack them together. And I got that liquid glue. Just kind of, once I get them all tacked in, I just drip, drip, drip on all the joints, and it's the capillary action goes into it. And hey, it's a lot easier now. Got smarter. But,
well, I think we have one comment here just regarding the topic from Dan. He just says, I like the single cast minis the best, but I try to pick ranges that can give you tons of different poses. I prefer plastic multi-part for conversions, though. I have lots of variety. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think that's actually one of the major benefits of the plastics. And when I've done videos in the past, I used to have an old series called Inquisitorial Thoughts, and one of my first ones I did was on this topic. And I think I even used the same miniature with some other ones to kind of illustrate that. And, some of the folks that I know that responded on that video said exactly that. Like, I'm really big into conversions. That's one of the big things I'm into. And for me, it's much easier to convert with plastics than it is in metal miniatures. Like, that was the main thing. And I think part of it is the idea that you need to saw some things, like a little bit more heavy duty, with metal. But then also, probably just the ease of manipulation is probably a lot more, I'm guessing, with plastic.
Yeah, it's like the last time I did some major conversion stuff was from D&D. It was the Reaper Bones miniatures. Mm-hmm. They're kind of with a semi-plastic resin stuff. And they sent me a whole bunch of it. We need, he's like, we got all these miniatures and we need some characters made out of this with different equipment stuff. It's like, we don't want this equipment that they're on, but you can take this off this one. It's like, okay, so I just take out the little clippers and snip everything off, trim, glue it together, and you're creating a single mono pose and making it into multi pose type of thing.
Yep.
And it's like, that was the nice thing about plastics or semi-plastic or resin stuff, is it's easier to work with. That's the nice thing about it compared to the old days when you had to actually carve things get a saw out and type of deal. And or break out the Dremel and go,
how does that go? So with the Dremel, one of the things you got to watch too with resin though is all the inhalation stuff too, right?
Oh yeah.
That's one of the things when I was getting I actually really love the old Warlord Games resin tanks, and I still have some to make for my World War II US. I still have some of those, and
sure.
But there were huge, at times huge pieces of flash on them, despite the heft and the beautiful, model. I still had to, clip and shave down some major pieces of resin at times. And man, even with a Dremel, and you go to town on one of those resin tanks, I mean, you can your whole hobby area can be covered with resin dust. I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah, it's like I have masks, those masks to use. To get a big pile of them just because of that. Just to, you go into the back room over here, my work room, and it's like, all right, put the mask on and start chopping things up.
Yeah, I have like, I wouldn't call it a respirator. I guess I have a 3M particulate mask, the ones where you can change the filters and stuff. I have one of those for that purpose that I use. So, but mainly, as an aside, when my wife was pregnant and she had to work around chemicals that she wasn't supposed to, like, inhalation, she was able to by using that mask. And so that's why I have it.
Because of work, she was able to get them.
That's right. Years ago, I acquired that mask because it's been many moons since we had our kids.
I got mine from my sister-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
She has a cleaning business. And she was like, has all this stuff, it's like if she gets into the chemical, really heavy industrial stuff, and it's like she has those things. And it's like, what are you gonna do with those? He's like, I'm thinking about throwing those away. And he's like, you sure? I'll take them. No, that's what. But that's the nice thing about it is that when it comes to the little monopose stuff, I like this stuff. This is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're gonna give me a metal miniature, I prefer monopose because I be honest, I hate trying to assemble metal miniatures. And I was like working on one of my heroes. It was my Tomb King. He's metal and he has the metal arms and I was sitting there trying to put the paint on him to get into the cracks and crevices with all, and honestly his shield arm goes like. He's already primed now. That's even harder. God. It's like, thanks. Like, man.
And I love my Minden and I talk about them all the time, but my Minden and Crantera stuff for Avenging War, I love using the metal single pose. Like I love those miniatures. I mean, like every time I actually do a project of those, I just really enjoy pulling them out. And I really enjoy placing orders for them. And I actually have too many that I got to get it caught up on. But I'm already thinking about stuff that I need to place. I always order rainy day models from them, so I have them in case, for any reason, I need a project to work on or whatever, but it's starting to pile up.
Well, I do have a whole bunch of miniatures that are all primed and ready to go because, we're kind of fickle at times as people. You're working on a project. Right now, I'm just going to town on these Tomb Kings, but they'll get to the point where, they're done and I'll move on to a project. And you may have 2-3 weeks of, like, this is wintertime. And I sent you a message and said, what are you doing? It's like, well, I spent all day priming miniatures. because it was 40 something degrees outside and it's sunny. So I'm going to take, you never know. It could be another month or more before we get good weather. And it's like prime, stack, prime,
Miniature priming season.
Yes. Because you never know. It could go from being really cold, icy, single digits, and then all of a sudden you'll get 2-3 weeks of nothing but rain.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't prime anything because I prime outside. And it's like, well, I need to pre-locate. And it's like a supply site, good military jargon here. I got my supply depot of miniatures in the back all ready to go for that rainy day. So,
well, I think we have anything else to add on that one? I think we've kind of made ourselves really clear on that.
Yeah, I think we're both in the same camp. We like our monopose, but if we're going to do with a multi-pose stuff, it's going to be a skirmish type game where we don't need a lot of miniatures.
Should I show another miniature to illustrate the point?
Yeah.
Again? Sure. All right. This one I didn't paint. This is for the future. I've not shown this on the channel yet, but it's part of some of my other.
It's a red orc.
Yeah, exactly. So this guy here, he's one of the C series, really old beastmen. He's holding a sickle there. He looks like kind of like a boar, right?
Yeah.
And here he's like hunched over like that. You just can't create that through randomness, like random slapping parts together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like we're saying, like there's advantages to both, but when we talk about really loving, sort of like the ability, what you can do, with the single cast models, like this is sort of to me an example of it. And I don't even want to cross over into the old Hammer love and the nostalgia, like, because that's another topic altogether. But you can, no matter what the genre, no matter how modern, how old, doesn't matter, you still can do certain things depending on the way you produce the kits and the miniatures. And so, yeah, I just saw this here. I figure before we move on to the next topic, I'll show it. I've got a whole bunch of these right behind them. I'll show in another video sometime. Yeah. Oh, there we go. You got your Blood and Plunder there.
Dutch monopose miniatures. Yeah.
Exactly.
But those are just ready. Are these primed? No, these are not primed. I was like, I have a whole bunch of stuff that is primed and ready to go for when I get that bug again to get back into doing some Blood and Plunder stuff.
Mm-hmm. You're gonna have them all on your desk watching all your other projects for a while again.
I don't know, maybe. That was a year-long project.
You get them to a certain point, and then they're all like got base paint on them, and they're all like standing around looking at everything else you're painting.
If you really did pay attention, if you actually paid attention and noticed that little bits every once in a while, it'd be something's done. Because I'll be working on something. Oh, I got this paint out. I'll do a little bit on this guy, a little bit on that guy, and that's how
once in a while there's a chain going into a pocket with a pocket watch assumed to be in there that you painted.
It was the slow transition.
Yeah.
They slowly marched their way to being finished. And then finally it's like, I just gotta get these guys. Get them done. And they did.
All right. Well, what do we think as far as the next topic? Why don't you kick that one off, Rusty?
Well, this question goes out to, what type of war gamer are you?
And hobbyist, you said.
And hobbyist.
So elaborate a bit.
Are you a painter, a gamer, a competitive type person, a collector, just an admirer, a plastic collector that never gets painted? It's like, as I always like to say, admirers are individuals that buy games that just buy them for the sake of buying them. Like I like all that. I like that line in miniatures. I'm just gonna buy them. You never do anything. You just admire that you have them.
Mm.
So that's the type of thing. I'm not sure. I'm a little bit of everything, I think.
I was going to say my answer is yes.
Yes.
However, I can elaborate.
Yeah.
But initially, it was just yes.
I'd say primarily I am a painter.
Mm-hmm.
I that's the thing I enjoy the most. On the spectrum, it's like painter is the largest portion of the spectrum that I am. And then I'd say a gamer is the next part. And then collector type of person. And then admirer is underlining the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it wasn't for being an admirer, I wouldn't be painting.
I noticed you didn't mention the piece about competitive or not.
That's gamer. That's a subcategory of gamer. Competitive gamer. Tournament guy. I used to do that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Blood.
Well, I would say that I consider myself for sure a painter first. I always have been. I started getting back into wargaming to play the game, coincidentally, but then I found out very quickly that in order to play the game, I had to paint a lot first. And then I just really got into the painting. Like I just really enjoyed it. You know, for me, there was a time where I used to come home from work and paint a lot. I don't do that as much anymore. Coming like home and just painting like right when I kind of get home from work, like working on something. I don't do that as much anymore. I tend to get just caught up in so many other life things, but I still love painting projects, and I like to, you know, that to me is just a lot of fun. I'm a little torn since you threw collector in there as to whether it's gamer or collector. I almost think it's a little bit of a dead heat. There was a time when it would definitely be gamer next, because I do enjoy playing games. I feel like I miss it quite a bit because I haven't been gaming the year of COVID very much at all, you know, in this last bit. But I do like to get into a rule set. However, unlike a lot of people and probably yourself, I'm not really a rules junkie in some ways. Like I don't really like to buy too many rules just to read them and things. I feel a little torn at times for having like too many rule sets even for one period, because I don't like to have to maintain too many types of rules in my head. And so I'm a little selective and a bit of a snob when it comes to rules, not actually snobbing down at a rules writer, but just more once I latch onto something and I like it, I can be hard to pull from it, you know, in some ways. And so, but I definitely am into the gaming. I find recently with the books and the old books I've been collecting, and then now, particularly with Old Hammer, with all the miniatures I've been collecting, both for my Beastmen army as well, in particular in my next High Elf army, I feel like I'm doing a ton of collecting. Now, granted, I'm going to be using them for games. I'm not just putting them on the shelf just to paint, but I've also collected a lot of Old Hammer that I don't have any plans for, you know, like as part of that process. And so I think the collecting part is kind of strong too. It's like almost as strong as the gaming part now, in some ways. And as time goes on, like even that project I showed earlier, like I'm not going to be gaming with that. That was mainly for an art piece and to display. And so in some ways, it's almost in that collecting sort of hobby realm that has nothing to do with gaming, you know. And at times I think I've got another project like that too that I want to do for 40K in the future, Warhammer 40K, even though I don't play it. Like I have a display piece I want to do. And I can see as the years go by me getting more and more and more into that. And even like how we're both doing busts at times, I think Victor's kind of got us painting up busts. You know,
down another rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you know, when you mention competitive, it's not as if I've not had my competitive moments. You know, I've had moments where I've been kind of competitive in my gaming career, but I'm mostly, and for the longest time, I've been more about wanting to envision a story playing out, and just seeing how the rules allow you to do that and having fun with it. But I can really enjoy a loss that's epic. Like I actually can really get into envisioning something that happened on the table and as a loss, but still thinking that this was just so cool. Like I was glad to be there for it, kind of thing, even though I was the one that got lost that particular thing. Like the way it happened, like it was just so epic that it simulated what we wanted out of the genre, whatever it is on the table. And so for me, I actually think I'm more of a narrative gamer, is I think what people are calling themselves that are competitive these days. Many of us are calling ourselves narrative gamers, because we want to build the story more. And I always try to win. And even with my kids, like when I've played war games with them, I never give someone a win. And if they beat me, they always know that it's not, I would never say it's because I threw it or that I just wasn't trying, because it's never the case. I always try, but not in a way to the point where I get upset, or anything like that.
Yeah, it's when it comes to being a gamer, my aspect of it is from the gaming, it's like, well, let's just start as my primary thing is if you look at somebody's hobby area, if you see a lot of paint, it means they're probably a painter. In both our cases, we have a lot of paint.
Yeah, I had some video that was up recently, and it showed a different angle. It showed this camera kind of like going like this, and this whole thing here was covered with Vallejo bottles, and I was like, oh my god, I've got to do something about that.
I need to organize it.
It's exactly what you talked about. Whenever I'm in a project, in between projects, I always do I think mine's actually kind of messing up now here. In between projects, I always do that kind of cleanup phase, like you've talked about. Or you were talking about having all this stuff on the table. I always have this cleanup phase when I finish a project where I put all my paints away that I was using. And it always feels good to sort of clean the table, start afresh and picking paints for the next project. But at the same time, they always go back, but during a project, it can get pretty crazy on my table.
If you look at my last, I think it was it when I did the Archers or was it the Cav? One of the last two Tomb King videos where I panned over to my Chaos Dwarves. You've seen it's like my desk is about half is paint. Because I got this big desk and half of it is covered in paint pots, because I have so many different ones. It's like, oh, I need this shade over here. Oh, let's grab that one. It's like, I have all the shades. It looks like, oh, I got this almost half the 3/4 of the GW line, and I have the P3 paints. And so primary, I am a painter. That is I love painting. That's the thing that brings joy to me is when something is done and you see it's like, you look at this and go, yes, that makes me happy.
Mm-hmm. And I really, I like to try new things when it comes to painting, and I like to see something. I really get excited when a new thing that I do works out and it came out nice, like something that I like. And so the comic book style painting in 2020 was a big thing for me. Like I actually, that was almost a perfect example of me trying to do something different and then being really happy with it. Even with the Mohawks, I felt some of the stuff I did with the war paints, I actually was new for me, and I was happy with the way they came out. I don't know how much you showed on the video, but I thought that slight blue sheen on the black for the black face paint, I like that because it kind of reminded me of that thing I see in real life that I don't really think about, that I can't quite place, how that highlight works, on, black, at times in certain things in real life. Even when you, now I don't know the exact reason for this, but when you look at a silverback gorilla, or certain gorillas and things, there are times you'll see almost a blue sheen, You
get that kind of a rainbow effect that's happening because you get that different shades of reflection that's coming off of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you look at black, it's not necessarily black. It's just it's absorbing all the full spectrum, and you're still going to get some type of reflection in the different areas of the spectrum.
Yeah, and there's different colors that make up dark things. I mean, sometimes when you have something that has dark fur, when you see it in the light, it looks different because you're actually seeing it, and it's just revealing something, you know, that you didn't see, that you can't see in the shade, you know, like about. So we've all seen like a brown herd animal that looks almost orange, like in a certain light, you know, but then in like a different area of the field with it, not in that direct sunlight, it looks like darker brown.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's there definitely when it comes, when you talk to people that are painters, you're going to see the here we're newbie on, not never a newbie, but we're just going, hey, so how about this? You know, we're just, oh, here's a question. Did you get into?
Yeah, hello, Play It Painted. I'm not sure that we've seen you in the room before, at least under that name, but thank you for joining us with the other guests tonight. And he says, did you go into any new miniature ranges in 2020? New manufacturer for you? So, Rusty?
Good question. 2020 wasn't really a year of picking up stuff new. I think I spent, if it was any new money spent, it was on board games, actually.
Well, I had one in particular that definitely comes to mind is the Atomic Mass Games Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Yeah,
total new line for me. Really nice miniatures, a little bigger than 28 millimeter scale. It was they're closer, I think, to 40, I believe. Some people argue that they're closer to 35 when you're on the forums and things, because, you know, you still have different characters that are quite big, you know, compared to others that are like normal human size. But that was a cool thing to get into. I did also paint a fair bit of Twilight in 2020. Now, it's not totally new in that I did start that actually in 2019, but just a little squad. But I painted a lot more of it in a different faction. And so that would be World of Twilight is what it's called. It's a bit more of a niche game, metal miniatures out of the UK. It's a fantasy sort of game. Yeah, so I did those. And I'm trying to think, because everything else was like old school GW stuff, like old fantasy models. And also,
as I say, 2020 being the lockdown, we were playing a lot of new stuff. It was, for me, it was just going back to old school and pulling out all my old miniatures for me and painting them. And I got a lot of stuff. The only thing that was really new, but it wasn't new because I started it in 2019, was all the Warlord games for the American War of Independence. So that was kind of new, but it wasn't new in 2020. Yeah, the rest for me was French Indian War, historical, and then Warhammer Fantasy stuff, but the old school stuff. Looks like Play It Painting says, great answer. Yes, Marvel Crisis Protocol was new for me in 2020 as well. I ended up really stretching my airbrushing skills on the larger pieces. That's awesome. I do find that's like another thing. Like for me, airbrushing has been a slow venture. Like I've probably had an airbrush now for 7 to 8 years, but it's never been my primary method. But I like my Infinity miniatures, I do more airbrushing on, particularly the I wanted to say the Pan-Oceania. I wanted to say Oceania. Pan-Oceania faction, which is my main faction. I tend to do some airbrushing to create some blends, like right in the beginning, and shadows, and they really pop with that airbrushing. And then I used to do a lot of my World War II tanks, starting with some airbrushing and stuff. But even there, like that's been a slow progression and learning curve, like over the years, because I've never been primarily an airbrush painter. But yeah, the Marvel Crisis Protocol miniatures are beautiful. I did buy some Fireforge miniatures.
Okay.
I did buy those. I just remembered. I did buy a box of those that could be used. I was thinking about using for project.
Right.
So that's the one line I did buy. It was those Foot Knights.
Oh, yes.
Remember.
That's right.
Now having Scott with Knights Pantry pop up, I was like, oh, I did buy some Knights. So.
I'm doing a lot of camera action here, but I just thought since we have a Marvel Crisis Protocol fan in the house, I'll just quickly show him. But this is like something I did that was just totally new for me. I've shown them on the YouTube channel, but I started doing comic style painting, which I've always in the past done much more on the realistic front. And so, yeah, these are just, I have the whole basic set painted now, and I have like the Hulk and also the Hulk and this guy actually right here. This isn't the basic set. So I have the whole core set and then 2 expansions painted. I have some more to do, but I'll be doing those down the road. But I'd never done this sort of style that just is meant to really pop, and like the inking. I used I have it right here actually, just because I don't have a better spot for it. But I used basically Amsterdam inks to do the shading, the stark shading on it. And that's kind of dicey when you first start working and do a new technique. And just like the airbrush, like you said, I mean, you can make a lot of mistakes whenever you try something new, and it's kind of scary. But at the end of the day, I find it fun when you do improve on that stuff, and then you can kind of come out on the other end doing something you couldn't do before, which is hard for me at times to do. And so, yeah. And so we got Dan here, and he says, I am a painter first, collector second, and a gamer third. Though I enjoy all aspects of the hobby, I'm not a overly competitive player. I like close games where both players have fun. Yeah. I would actually say I see myself the same way, Dan. And I also, even though I put gaming last, and sometimes I'm really hesitant because I do love to game, right? Like, and so it's not as if like I'm like a ho-hum player, like, sure, I'll come down and drag my models down. No, like I sometimes just have more fun gaming. Sometimes I can have more fun in a game than I can at any one moment in my painting. But the game itself never stretches or gives me as much peace in my life as the painting over such a long period of time. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. Like I can have like an amazing game, like it's so much fun, but I still call myself a painter first because of how much I enjoy it and like the lifestyle of it, and just like way it makes me feel and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. It's I guess the way I enjoy painting every aspect that I can in most games that I play, and it's because of the game that I become a collector. Mm-hmm. So it's like if I enjoy a game a lot and I like and say, I really enjoy this game, then I find myself I want to collect because I'm playing the game, then it becomes I'm trying to collect everything I can with that game, which can be a very big hit on the pocketbook.
And collecting can be viewed also as like a bad thing, in the sense that many of us are just like, of course, feel horrible about like the lifetime of miniatures that we'll never get to paint that we've collected. Oh, yeah. But at the same time, there is a real enjoyable aspect to it too, like depending on what it is. Like the collecting aspect is a lot of fun. Hopefully not getting into the completionist mindset too much, because that can just be something that not only hurts our wallet, but can drive us insane.
Well, it's I have sort of that completionist aspect to me. It's Mel's in the house here.
Yeah, hello, Striker.
It's one of the reasons why it's like when, Dan likes to say I have a museum of Warhammer Fantasy in the house, because back in the day, it's like I enjoyed playing Warhammer Fantasy, and it's like I liked every army. It's like I'd buy a little bit of this army, a little bit of that army, because you never know. It's like you'd be playing 3-4 months of this army every night or 3 times a week. It's like, I'm getting kind of tired. I want to try a different aspect of the game and then start another army. Mm-hmm. And that's end up what happened. That's why I have so many armies.
Yeah. And that's what
it goes. Eventually it's like, hey, I played this army a lot. Go to the next one. It's like, hey, I find myself right back to the original army.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to expand my army some more, so I'll buy a few more miniatures for it.
And that's like my saga. Like I started with the Anglo-Danes, which for a lot of people, they're kind of like Vikings, right? Like the Anglo-Danes are really close. Yeah. But they have in Saga, they're their own, particularly version 1, like their own faction. They're very different than Vikings in the way they play. But then I wanted to do Highlanders, or I wanted to do Scottish, and love that army. And like still haven't played that one enough, but I love that. But because I'm kind of all in on the Dark Ages for Saga, like I'm not really, other than doing the fantasy, like I'm not really going into anything else with it. I'm already thinking like I'm gonna do Vikings someday, like all out Vikings. Because how can I actually like have one of my favorite shows be Vikings and play Saga and do all this stuff and then like
And not
never
have
get to paint Vikings? I never get to paint Vikings. Are you kidding me? And so yeah.
Speaking of Vikings, have you watched the season finale?
No, I haven't.
Finale yet?
I haven't. No.
Okay.
Not yet. I say it's like one of my favorite shows, but I have to admit, I really got disappointed with the last couple of seasons. And maybe it got a lot better, and I didn't realize it because I've heard a lot of people say positive things about the end of this recent episodes. But man, like the first 3 to 4 seasons, like oh my god, I just love that show so much.
When Ragnar left the show, when they killed him off, that's when it started going. To me, it started going downhill.
Yeah. So Mel's in the house. And we got Scott says, I am just getting back into gaming. Says, and I'm going to be using the miniatures for a teaching project I am starting. Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, he's planning on setting up, building his little stuff, and then use it for historical aspects of it and just doing some educational stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, when you think about it, we have all these really intricate, cool miniatures, and like whether it be historical or fantasy, but you think about it, we use them to game with, but they're actually pretty cool in of themselves. And I could imagine, like even with props. I mean, when you go to, there are a lot of times like museums will have little things where they'll have miniatures and stuff in there, dioramas for totally different purpose, right? And everybody's like, "Oh, look how awesome that is!" Until they see a bunch of guys rolling dice around the table, and they think, "What's up with those guys?
What are they doing?" They're reenacting the diorama. That's
exactly. Painted says, never painted World of Twilight, but always see it on Knights of Dice. Looks very interesting. It is. I only have gotten some initial scenario games in, but I really love the uniqueness of the miniatures, and I think the game itself has some really unique mechanics with the rolling of the stones instead of dice for the most part, and the way you can do that and manipulate sort of the roll off of stones against your opponent. There's some really interesting mechanics to it. And so Mike, who's I believe the creator of the game, has done like an amazing job with it. And I have it, I have some core games that are sort of ahead of it in my priorities in my hobby life, but I have it and like games like Marvel Crisis Protocol that I just have there kind of just a little below that I want to play and never get enough time into it, but we'll constantly circle back to it, for both painting and gaming. He says, love the plasma orc photobomb too. I'm not sure if you were here on the show. You might have came in a little late, but I was using him as an example for one of our prior topics. He was just, we were talking about single cast versus multi-pose miniatures and the advantages of each. And he's an old single cast model that I always bring out. Yeah, I bring that one out in particular for some reason for the discussion. Got howdy Mel, and looks like Mel is coughing into his elbow, which is very appropriate. And they were a lot more affordable back then too. I'm trying to remember what we were talking about that might have been referenced to. That happens sometimes on the show and we get a lot of comments.
When I was going secular, talking about buying armies.
Oh yeah.
It's like we played fantasy where it's like you have your army, it's like then you start rotating into the next one and then you start buying it. It wasn't that hard to buy an army.
Yeah,
and you could spend $100 and get a decent sized army.
Right. Looks like we have some other questions.
And that's the thing is about back and forth and third, fourth, and really about 5th edition is that, and you didn't need a lot of models to play fantasy. Because I related to it earlier. It's like in 4th edition, a model warrior, your rank and file might cost you 16 points. Mm-hmm. And then the next edition, it was 12. The next edition, it was 8. And then the next edition, it's 4. And the model count just kept being bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And to the point where, somebody wanted to get into the game. It's like, well, you need $500 just to build your basic army. Or buy 3 of these box sets over here, that the starter sets, and trade, that type of deal. So then you'd have
Sometimes when you look back at like let's say the older versions of 40K, like can you look back at where they show games happening and you just have like maybe 2 units of 10 and like a vehicle and like a leader and a dreadnought and like that's kind of it, like fighting something else similar. You're like, oh my gosh, the beauty and the simplicity. Because like after you've played later and you've been to the point where forget Apocalypse, but you've played like these games where you just have like masses coming from each side of the table at each other, like just push all your plastic, from my side of the table. These sort of like old school armies that are just really confined and like tight, you know what I mean? Like they just have their own charm to them. You're like, oh my god, what happened?
Yeah, I know. It's like how do you guys afford all those miniatures? Like, we didn't need a lot of miniatures. It was small. It was a 1,000 points or a 1,500 point force. Literally, had a small footprint.
Yeah.
And that's where you got your bigger models. Oh, I need a couple dreadnoughts, and that was filling it out.
Play Painted says, I miss Saga. Had a Carolinian Franks army. Yeah, that's a cool army too. I have a friend that plays them, and so they're great. That's the lots of cavalry and very powerful force, and particularly in first edition, I've seen it play more. But if you haven't seen Saga in a while, what I would say is, in my opinion, having played both first and second, I oftentimes will, just because I'm used to it or whatever, favor a first edition for whatever reason. It tends to be my more go-to in that case. But I've said it on this channel and on this show quite a bit that I actually love the Saga second edition. I think with the Book of Battles they came out with all of the scenarios and so many more ways to play. And I just think the way they've tightened up combat and structured movement a little differently, it's actually, in my mind, I like it much better. Now everybody has their own opinion on that. Oh, by the way, we also have I've seen some people jump in. We've got Stig over at Little Legions, and we've got Clark Stepp that have joined us. And hello, gentlemen. Thanks for joining in.
Howdy ho.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had really not the 6 mil stuff. It's like when we were always talking about building an army out of rice grains. It's like that's almost like watching 6 mil stuff is being put together. Like, wow. What you can do with that stuff.
Yeah, you know it's funny. I've never really done stuff really, really small, but there is to me, like as somebody that primarily sees themselves as a painter, I like the bigger models for sure. Like I like 28 mil and stuff like that. But at the same time, in liking the gaming stuff, like I see a charm in trying something. Like I think it'd be neat just to see like what it'd be like to put together a little like 3mm Viking force, like, you know what I mean? Like I just think that would be really cool. I'm not sure what game I'd play with it, but seeing like some of those really like epic scale armies, I think they're still really cool. And actually, with Stig on the channel, I really like his epic stuff. He's got a number of different armies and different manufacturers too, and particularly when you know what it is, like you see Space Marines and you're familiar with them normally, like on the table, but then when you see everything like miniaturized again, like another level to that, it's just so awesome. You're like, oh, that's a dreadnought, or that's like a, look at that, that's like a warlord titan. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's really, it brings a different perspective to it.
Yeah, my as I'm getting older, it's getting harder to paint it's like back in the day, I didn't need, when I was painting all the epic stuff for Space Marine. It's like just paint all the details. You can see all the details now. It's like even with the glasses, the heavy duty glasses, like it's getting harder.
Yeah. Well, my optometrist changed when next time I see him, because it's been a while, but I used to just see much better really up close with my glasses. And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to give you a little distance just so, when you're driving, like the road signs, it's just that much better, this, whatever. So he's like, I'm going to take away a little bit in the close and to give you a little bit of the further. And he says, it's just going to be a little bit. You'll let me know next time if you like it or not. And I'm too lazy to go back to get my lenses changed or anything. But I can tell you, the moment I see him, I'm going to be like, I want to go back. Like,
you give me 2 pairs. Something for up close and then something for far.
Yeah. I want to go back to exactly the way it was. And it's not even, it makes it sound like I need just better eyes, right? No, it has nothing to do with that. But I mean, I wore this even before I had my glasses changed, like, my visor. But now I feel I'm a little more dependent on it. And I just feel like, yeah, they kind of screwed me over on my miniature painting, like my optometrist last time I went, because
I
I
get about 5 years older.
well, I see very well overall. Like my rating with glasses is very good, but he just did enough to just make it so it's just a little bit harder with the up close, with the way he extended it out a little bit.
Yeah.
But
it's like when it comes to put this on here, I have no problem. But now I'm looking at the screen. It's like, get back right here. I can read the screen. Get up to here. It's starting to get blurry. So throw the glasses on.
Looks like we have Lord Seaver in the house. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. And I'm not sure what that is. We got Striker. That's a clapping. That's a waving. And that's clapping. All right. And we've got, Dan says, I'm always tempted by Stig's smaller scales. Yeah, he's definitely got some really cool stuff.
I look at the 6 mil, when you're doing, was it Napoleonics? I think it is. He's doing. Is that correct? It's like I'm looking at that and go, wow. It's like I have a lot of 15 mil medieval stuff, Vikings and Saxons and Normans and all that fun stuff. And I've done a lot of the epic stuff when it comes to Space Marine. When I look at I played battles in 6 mil at conventions before, and I just look at it and it's like, man, there's just so much. And then seeing what he's done, put all the details, and I was like, that is just amazes me how he's doing that. It's like, wow.
Play It Painted has got a question for us, and maybe everybody in the group, if they want, can answer this. But he says, favorite non-GW range of miniatures to paint. How about you, Rusty? What's your favorite non-GW range of miniatures?
Now, if it's in the last year, it would be the Perry American War of Independence stuff. The miniatures are just amazing. The amount of detail in them. Just when I was painting those dragoons that Dan and I had our last game with AWI, I was like, when I was painting those up, I was like painting. I was like, oh wow, there's more detail here. Oh, there's more detail there. I felt like I was never going to end because I kept finding stuff.
Yeah, I find that really tough because almost my favorite miniature line is pretty much my French Indian War stuff, which is the Minden Miniatures or Crantera. But I guess to answer your question, like if we're thinking also like fantasy, or sci-fi because of non-GW, but just not GW, I would probably say Corvus Belli, Infinity, because I really do like painting those miniatures. I love the sculpting out of Corvus Belli. I think the sculpting is just quite amazing for what they're trying to do. So.
Yeah, they definitely have some really nice miniatures. I painted some of those up before for Infinity, when I did have a small force of stuff before I sold them off. It was very enjoyable. The details. And the nice thing about them is you don't need a lot of miniatures to play the game. So you could build a force fairly quickly and paint it up nicely.
Absolutely.
The fantasy football game, those teams,
the Good Ball and stuff, or the Guild Ball?
Guild Ball.
Yeah.
Those were really nice miniature lines that I painted up. I enjoyed painting those.
Yeah, they're really nice. We've got Dan says, I really enjoyed painting Black Tree Design World War II miniatures a few years ago. Yeah, Black Tree Design.
I painted some of those up. Was it 2 years ago when I did all my Russians? I had some Black Tree Russians. I think it was 2 years ago for my bolt action stuff.
let's see here. You actually painted quite a lot of non-GW, I would say, Rusty, like in the last bit. Like even among historicals, like you've done a lot of different lines, I would say. Like we were just talking about Blood and Plunder.
Yeah.
You've done the Warlord games, you've done the Perrys, Black Battle Group, right?
I've done the official English for the Blood and Plunder.
Yeah.
For the company.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what, I did that 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to believe that's been 4. No, it's almost going on 5 years ago this next month.
Seems like yesterday.
Yeah, it just seems like yesterday.
Here at the Musty Wargamers, where yesterday's 5 years ago. So Playpainter says, I just finished Heroes for Defiance. Oh, so amazing. So Defiance, that's the skirmish game that Corvus Belli put out, right? Correct? Which yeah, just let me know if that's right, because I was really looking into that at one point, and I really was close to picking that up. Because the thing that's really nice about it is you get members of each faction, like to some degree, within Infinity, because it's like basically a skirmish board style game where you can have like a group of people that represent Tano and the Nomads and like all the different factions going against the combined army, and that would present a lot of awesome painting opportunities.
That's a Heroes of Defiance, huh?
Well, it's not Heroes for Defiance. That's not the game. I think what he's saying is I just finished the Heroes for the game Defiance.
Okay.
Because I was talking about Infinity, and that's the one that I'm familiar with. But he can correct me if there's another game out there with that similar name. Because I think it was done on Kickstarter, and I was close to leaping in on that one. I think it was Corvus Belli's first Kickstarter, because they don't typically use that model of business model. But yeah, no, I still have so many Infinity miniatures to paint for the normal game that was the reason why I didn't go in on it, and maybe I'll regret it one day on that.
You did answer the question.
Yeah, it says yeah, Defiance is Corvus Belli Dungeon Crawler campaign with Infinity, great fun, and minis are off the charts good. Yeah, it looked really good, and then I love the variety, the fact that you can just get experience painting each faction through it, which is really cool, even just from a painting perspective. So hello, Sean. Sean is in the house. We didn't say hi to him yet, did we? I didn't see him come in. He just popped in. All right. So he says Galloping Major French Indian War. Absolutely. That's a great line. There's a lot of people that are like diehard Galloping Major fans because they have so much variety and great sculpts.
You got Bill.
Bill is in the house. Hello. Question right now, Bill, is what are your favorite non-GW range of miniatures to paint? Just to loop you in on the current discussion. Sean says, Blood and Plunder Sea Dogs were my favorite minis I ever painted. They have some really nice models. Did you have the Sea Dog faction, Rusty?
I painted some Sea Dogs up, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much all the stuff in the original Kickstarter and releases, I painted all those.
Nice. Mel says, currently painting up 15mm medieval tabletop games figs that are currently available from alternative armies. Cool. I'm amazed as to the level of detail that are in some of the 15mm models today.
Yeah, it's always been, when it comes to 15s, there's always been a large range, and it just keeps growing. That's the wonderful thing about it, is that there's never been a lack of miniature lines for most 15s for the major eras.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would almost think that like today there's some 15 mils that the detail is practically better than 28s. You know, I mean, like just with certain manufacturers, they're quite amazing. I was trying to think. There's a fantasy line.
The eyes.
Sorry?
You paint the eyes.
Yeah, that's right. There's a fantasy line, 15 mil, that I got some bugbears that I was going to do them for the old AD&D Battle Systems game, and I'm trying to remember the name of them. That it's escaping me, but they just the level of detail is just totally amazing.
There was a splintered
Splinter Light.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. Yeah, because I couldn't remember it. But they are just Splinter Light miniatures. They're just really fantastic, some of them. Bill says, I am painting up Vikings and Franks for Saga. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, those are really nice miniatures. And so those are definitely non-GW and very good miniatures.
Multi-pose miniatures.
Well, actually, not necessarily. I think Bill does have the box of multi-pose that you're talking about, but from what I remember that he showed, he also, and Bill, the reason we're talking about this is our earlier topic, it was multi-pose versus single note pose models. Some of the Army packs that Bill showed last time are metal miniatures, and some of those are single pose. Like some of them are not like there's no like assembly of arms and things like that. You usually do have to put in the spears and stuff and the weapons in the hands, but they're still single pose models. And then they have their Galloping Major has both single cast metal miniatures and multi-pose plastic kits. Play Painted says, if you love the Corvus Belli range, Aristea has become a mainstay for me, both as a game and collecting and painting. I do have a friend that plays Aristea. You know, he's somebody that I do have played Infinity with, and he really likes it. I'm kind of like what we were talking about a little earlier as far as our priorities. I have a tendency to kind of pigeonhole myself into things and try to fend off getting into new stuff as much as possible. And so I've held off on Aristea. But they do have that Corvus Belli sculpting that's just amazing. And if I remember, if you like to try plastic or resin Corvus Belli sculpts instead of the metal, that you have that opportunity with the Aristea stuff, which is totally different. And so that's their first time, I think, that they did that stuff. So yeah, like that is interesting, and I could see myself maybe picking up some of that just to paint it perhaps someday in the future. I'm not sure so much about, because I'm so backlogged on the games that I haven't played, even the stuff I want to get into and own. It's really hard for me to think about new games sometimes.
I know, it's like you have to put you look at stuff and go, oh, I like that, I want that, I want that. Nope, sorry, can't. No. I came across what was it? Hassle-free miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
I've been wanting to do is get, Ash Williams,
mm-hmm.
Army of Darkness, when he's sitting there holding the shotgun, got my boomstick, and he's got his chainsaw, and they have a miniature that has a boomstick and a chainsaw. They call him Oakley.
Yeah.
Like Ash and Oak.
Right.
And I was like, I want to get that one, and then have him out there. It's like the next time I play the Tomb King's army, and it's like marching out there, I'm going to put him, if I have him, put him right in the middle of the thing, of the battlefield. He's, like he's an objective or something.
That's awesome.
That was something I was like, that came to me this week, and like I seen that and go, I need that.
That's a good question. Since we're still talking, I know we're still talking about favorite miniatures to paint, but what is a line of miniatures or a board game, something of the sort, of a genre that you have no intention of playing necessarily, but just feel like you almost have to have the miniatures to be able to paint them up because you love that genre, that movie, that whatever it is? For me, there's so many, to be honest. But there's one company, it's a small company that does the miniatures for Time Bandits and the movie Time Bandits, and I just would love to paint those up just because I love that movie, like both as a kid and then I showed it to my kids. Like I just absolutely love it. So that's actually one of them. But then the Thing board game came out, like from the movie The Thing.
Yeah.
And I honestly just never got it, but I just have always kicked myself about thinking to get it just to paint the stuff up, because I'm such a fan of that movie, and I just would love to just paint the miniatures up. Like that's just two. But what about you, Rusty?
Well, recently the one I've really looked at is they had that Joan of Arc game.
Okay, yeah.
It has it's like a fantasy historical smash up type thing going on. And I look at that and it's like, I really probably won't never play the game, but the miniatures would just look cool just to paint. That's something I looked at and I'm like, yeah, I'd really just like to have that just to paint the miniatures type of deal.
So I'm trying to think. Of course, I don't play any of them, but Aliens is just like a no-brainer. You know, like I never bought it, but every single time a product for Aliens comes out, I'm always like, I should get it, and then I'm like, I don't. But it's for the same reason. But I think the Conan stuff too.
Oh yeah, the Conan game.
Yeah, like the only thing though is I don't think they modeled it after Arnold. Like I don't think Conan's modeled after Arnold.
Like he looks kind of like the one that Frank. The fantasy guy, all the
paintings and stuff, which that is cool too. But in some ways, I'm all about the original movie. Like,
the original artwork that's on all the Conan books was done by Frank. I can't remember his last name.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but he did all the artwork for all those books. So that's what they based it off of.
Right, which that makes like to me that's still a good choice for sure. I could see with the fans. Bill says, I enjoy painting Perry miniatures the best. So that's actually another vote for Perry miniatures. Rusty said earlier he agrees with you because he was saying his American War and Independence models he really liked from the Perry brothers. And he says, I've painted many Perry Samurai range miniatures. Yeah. And Play Painted says, I need Time Bandit miniatures. No, I know. I almost... I have this plan to do these like little displays for my kids at one point where they're like on little pieces of wood with like a glass dome, and I just kind of paint some miniatures, do a little scene. And I was really thinking about getting the Time Bandit ones just for that reason, just to have like them holding the map. You know, like they have one where he's like holding the map and you could put like the other Time Bandits around him. But I also like the evil guys too, because they're just really funny, like some of the evil ones. And so I think they show, oh, he's not Dr. Evil. I forget the name of the villain. It's not the Supreme Being, but the guy that's the main villain in it. But he's like pointing out there like he's going to turn like one of them into a pig. And they even have one of them that's like half pig or something like that too. And so, yeah, those would be, they'd be amazing to have. He says, not all that interested in playing Deep Wars, but their miniatures really are unique and interesting.
Yeah, if you ever look at the Deep Wars miniatures, the ones that they had professionally done, those are just amazing. Just I've seen them in person. It was before at the convention. I was like, wow. Okay, if you look at it, it's like, I sucked in. It's like, roll a D20. Made my save. Woo.
And that's all. That's basically Deep Wars. From what I remember, it's just basically an underwater battle. Like it's all sea creatures, right, and stuff. Yep. Oh, you just froze there, Rusty. You're not moving. Okay. Well, you moved your head a little bit. Okay. you occasionally freeze up like Mr. Freeze there. I know. I was just hoping that. So, you know what's funny, though, is how times change, too, because prior to Night Models, a number of years ago, doing their Marvel line, and now Atomic Mass Games, this would be my answer. Like, my first answer would be Marvel stuff. Like, because I just grew up with Marvel comics, you know, in the 80s, late 70s. And, you know, in particular, I was waiting for the day that this stuff started to come out. And it's funny how once it comes out, it's not that I don't love it and I'm not following it and all that stuff, but once you have something, like you kind of take it for granted immediately. You know, like when you don't have something, you're like, in your head, you're like, it would be so amazing just to have this. But then once you get it, then like, you know, you have it. And now you can like think about something else you don't have.
Well, and I also have never know how long it's going to be around before it goes off the market.
True. And I also have, like, this is the thing from Night Models that I'll be painting soon. I still have lots of Night Model stuff to paint that I never got to. I probably painted about 25 at least miniatures from Night Models, but I still probably have another 25 to 30 to paint, being the next one I'm going to do. He's kind of in my queue here to do with stuff that's coming up.
When you started doing the Marvel, their Night Models, the Marvel stuff, it's when they went off the market about that same time. And it's like I really started getting interested, and then it's like, oh, it's no longer available.
Well, they did their stuff for a bit. Like this thing model came out before the game was dropped. So they had their sort of sculpts in hand, a few of them. But then literally they dropped the game, and within 8 months it was done.
Yeah.
And so they just released stuff. They released some really nice stuff, but then it was done. And everybody that's watched my channel knows like my gnashing of teeth that happened. You know, at the same time, I was never that big into the game. Like I was trying to make it work. You know, I was just trying to really do my best to enjoy it as a game, but I just didn't really feel like the game was amazing. So when it did finally leave, you know, I was just like, okay, whatever. I was disappointed not to see any more miniatures come, to be honest. But from what I've seen of Crisis Protocol, it's doing much better, you know, than what than Models did with the game, with the license.
The marketing is a lot better. They're backing it a lot better. It's totally night and day comparatively how the two different companies. It's like I would compare the old Night Models releases to like the Spartan Games when it came to the Halo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, we got Halo stuff, we're gone. You know, that almost that quickly.
Yeah. Bill says the miniatures for the board game Nemesis look amazing. You know, I don't know that one. Do you know that one?
I've heard of it. I haven't paid much attention to it.
Let me see if I can pull that up and put it on screen. I'm always worried there's going to be like more than one. Nemesis board game geek. And so, actually, here's a good shot. Let me see if I'll just show this here. We are entering, let's see. So you see my screen yet?
Yep.
See that?
Go
Is
ahead.
it full screen or no?
Yeah, go full screen.
Oh, okay. I'm not on it. Hang on. There we go. Do you see that?
I just see you.
Oh, it just knocked me out of share screen. Okay, this. I have to add it to the screen. Okay. You see it now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So that's some of the miniatures that Bill's talking about.
It's like Infinity.
Well, it's definitely strong human faction focus there and that there. That looks pretty cool.
Like we got Professor Xavier there.
Yeah, this is a little
Dr.
closer.
Freeze.
And so here's some more models. Like, there we go. Look at that.
Wow.
Like some of this stuff is like basically aliens, like in the back there.
Yeah.
That does look cool.
Yikes.
This stuff's painted, so it'd be nice to see some of the unpainted stuff up close, to be honest, just because, sorry if I'm cycling too fast there, just because sometimes when you're coating paint on, it's hard to tell. There we go. Oh no, those are painted too. They look pretty good.
Looks like Geiger style miniatures.
Yeah.
So that's a board game.
Yeah, that's what Bill was saying.
Almost like a spaceship or
Yeah.
a dungeon crawler type stuff.
It's pretty neat. I wouldn't mind seeing. They didn't show too much on the unpainted. That looked like there, the way they've done it there, it looks pretty good. The contrast.
It looks like everybody has their little bit of stats and everything when it comes to the plan. It looks like they're about ready to kick a door in.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of photos here. I'm going to just pull out here, see if I can zoom. Well, here's one that might be unpainted. Well, I don't know. That looks painted too. So kind of hard to tell.
And this comes into the collecting aspect of a gamer and admirer. There's so many of the stuff that we'll get and admire it, but never get around to painting it.
Yeah, that's true. Scott says, Landsknecht, Bill, 1525, interesting name. Is there an inspiration for that? He says, I used to reenact as a Landsknecht. Connect. Play Painted says, Night Models Batman 3rd Edition is a pretty good game, but yeah, the way they release models rules leave something to be desired. Yeah, and you know, it's probably always improving, and from the most of the people that I talk to, they prefer the Batman miniatures game, the original, whether it be first, second, or third, I'm not sure, but it seems to have a bit more of a hardcore following as their original game. And being that it's a what I call it, a henchman style game, where, you know, you just have lower level characters to begin with. Like you have some powerful characters that come in, but you have like a gangs, you know, like essentially like you could be police or whatever. It's a totally different style game than the Marvel Universe or DC Universe game, you know. And so I've heard people that like one versus the other more, but overall, even though I never played it, it seems like the Batman one has a bit more of a stronger following. At least it used to.
Are they even still doing stuff with it?
That I don't know. I would say though that some of the sculptors, like for Night Models, are really quite good. I mean, they still have made some amazing sculpts. And as the Marvel stuff was getting on in time, like closer to when they canceled it, when they did the X-Men release, like Toad and like some of the X-Men miniatures they did for that, and even the fit and the sculpting and the casting was really top notch. It was like much like levels above what they used to do. And so I will give them that. I mean, like that stuff was really cool. But I actually look at it almost from the community perspective. Like the Crisis Protocol just seems to have a lot of people on board with the game. A lot of people seem to really love it. And so it's a bit contagious. Yeah,
it's when you become looking at the different aspects of the hobby. We're sitting there looking at all the different ways we can start collecting stuff. It's like we're being bombarded with all the desires and wants, and it's like, hey, that would be really cool. And you look at it and you go, oh, you know, there's so many people out there that buy these games and they're like, I would really like to be able to paint that, and they have no way of doing it. They don't have the skills, so it always stays as the infamous cracked plastic pile.
Well, if I felt like I had the time, or if I had the determination, I'd be painting my Zombicide at Massive Darkness, because we love playing those games as a family. Like that's probably what I play the most of at this point. But yet it's just so much painting, and I have so much for my tabletop games that I'm behind on for painting, that to just, oh, here you go, like here's another 400 miniatures, you know. I mean, literally between the two of them, I have like 400 miniatures that I could just be painting forever and not even paint any of my other stuff. And so it's tough. You have to kind of draw the line somewhere. And
well, they designed it. A lot of these games now, it's like you said, Zombicide could be a really cool looking miniature game.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a board game that has cool pieces in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the average person can pick it up, play it, and not think about painting anything.
Right.
And then you get the painter aspect of it, looks at it and go, those would look really cool painted up.
You know? Yeah, no, absolutely. Like they're great. And there are a lot of people that do paint them up for sure on YouTube. Like you can see a lot of them. And they're awesome. And Massive Darkness has some really nice ones too, as well. And I ended up getting pretty much, I bought the Kickstarter off of somebody else. Like I did split it off with like a couple of the boxes I don't have, but I pretty much have most of the Kickstarter for Massive Darkness. And I have no idea when I'll actually get it, if I'll ever get that stuff painted.
Well, it's a board game, right?
It is, yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be painted. It looked cool if it would.
Yeah, it would look great. Like I think, and I play it with my family, and in some ways, because we're kind of, it's taken us a while, but we're kind of, because we only play it every once in a while, but we're kind of getting through the Black Plague, and I was just thinking we've had so much enjoyment with it that it'd be fun just to paint up even like the first heroes to have it when we ever pick it up again in the future.
Yeah.
We still have to do the Wolfsburg, which is like the it's basically like werewolves and trying to think. It's basically wolves and like a werewolf abomination that and you get towers where you can raise levels. So it just adds some stuff to the game. It's a nice expansion, but we've only played like 1 or 2 scenarios out of that one. So
but you could always say is like you look at BattleTech, it's a board game that's gone mutated into something else. It's originally little stand-up cardboard mechs and stuff, and now it's got miniatures with it you can paint.
And I actually had that. I actually had the orangey red. Is it the Warhammer that was on the first one with the black border that said BattleTech, the box that had the stand-up card guys?
Yeah.
Like I actually had that original one. I mean, I was too young to really understand how to play it. I was really young. It was like even before D&D, I think. Before I had the basic set, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you would have been a teenager when that came out.
Which one? The orange one?
No,
I was younger than that. I was younger than that. For sure, I was younger.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I'm like I'm going on 48. I'm going on 48, but I can tell you that I was in grade school. I was in grade school. I was in like 3rd grade, like something like that, when I got that box. And and it was the one with the stand-up cards and stuff. Yeah. And then who would know that I'd be drinking a beer every time somebody mentioned the name on our show? Like years later.
What kind of beer drinking games you got? Well, anytime we say BattleTech, you get a drink.
Every time the word BattleTech is mentioned, you take a sip. So
what's this BattleTech that you speak of?
So Play Painted says, yeah, they just released Objective Deck for Court of Owls, which is a gang within the Batman Miniatures game. It just takes so long to do releases. And that is, yeah, I think that's true. It's like they do take a while. I can't even keep up with the Marvel Crisis Protocol releases. And, and unfortunately, it isn't a cheap game. Like, the miniatures, like, buying 1 or 2 miniatures. I mean, for me, it's Canadian dollars, but you're looking
20-25, isn't it, per miniature?
Well, maybe, I guess, because maybe for the regular miniatures, when you buy a 2-pack, it's around 45 or something like that. So that might be right. Some of them almost seem like they cost close to 40 to 50 if it's like Venom, like 1 miniature in a slightly large box. Like some of them are just really quite expensive. And so you certainly are paying for the utility in the game. And to me, it's not the greatest game if you are a completionist and a collector, because you're going to spend like thousands of dollars on this ultimately. If that's okay, that's what you want to do. But
well, like you look at individuals today that play 40K, you can spend a couple $1,000s on 40K easily. Just if you want to get the complete, all the miniatures and fill out and complete. It's like, I got my Mechanicus army. I was completed at once. And then they released all these new models, and I'm no longer complete. And I doubt I'm going to buy them.
By the time you finish the army, you'll have already bought 3 editions.
Yeah.
And so by the time you buy your 3 codexes and your 3 rule books, and then your 3 decks of cards and like your 3 of whatever else you need, that's actually like $500 to $600 right there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's like I'm basically done, I think, when it comes to that aspect of it.
Where have I heard that before? Even from you. When have I heard that before?
Well, I haven't bought any. 7th edition was the last time I bought anything for books. For 40K.
So how are you playing Ninth edition.
I haven't played 9th yet. I played 8th edition because the people that, I would do commission work, and then they'd say, all right, part of the commission, here, I'll give you some of the book. And they'd pay me in miniatures and books and stuff. That's how I got it.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't bought anything, so.
Okay. Well, that's good. You worked your butt off for it, but you didn't buy it.
Well, I still got money and stuff, but.
Yeah. Well, I think we've had some good extra topics tonight to talk about as well. Play It Paint has brought up some cool topics tonight. Thank you very much. So for those of you that joined late in the show, I do apologize, guys. For the first time, I think I really didn't put an advanced stream notice up. We just kind of put it up on the Musty Wargamers Facebook page, and on my channel, I did put up a community notice today, but I got a little bit behind the 8 ball in the planning this week and didn't do that. And so for those of you that joined late, if that is one of the reasons, I apologize. But other than that, we had 2 cool topics tonight. You can go back and watch them after they're uploaded onto YouTube. One being single pose versus multi-pose models, and then the other being what type of gamer are you? In your priority of things as far as painting and playing games, etc. And so Rusty's reaching for his ship again. You're going to transport your blood and plunder models.
Now they're going back into the ship.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, very cool show tonight. Thanks everybody for joining. And any last minute thoughts there, Rusty?
Yvast, you mateys. We're going to war.
You have to get your sea dogs on there that we talked about earlier. Bring a barrel of lemons for him.
I can fill that thing up full of miniatures. Yeah, I think we covered everything, along with all the extra stuff and having everybody that popped in tonight and discussing things. So we're looking at 2 weeks from now for our next show. I see that today's the 21st, the 28th.
Yeah. So over at HellCorrex26, because the way we do our show is we rotate every 2 weeks. One show on my channel, one show over on Rusty's channel. Same format, everything else the same. Yeah, and so look for us over there. We will. Okay, we will post in the Facebook page as usual, just announcing that we're going to be doing it. And yeah, and thanks for joining, everybody, and hope you guys have a good rest of the week.
All right. Good show, guys. Glad you all stopped by and added to it. And we'll see you in the next one. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Take care.